going on, Spidey fans? Welcome to episode 16 of the Endgame series. Thank you for watching the previous episode of the Endgame series, episode 15, which was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, with the other champion of Rotten or Fresh, Zach the Deadpool Pope. That's very well appreciated. And we have another Rotten or Fresh champion here in the building. You guys know who this man is. He's a beast at Rotten or Fresh, and he's also a gigantic MCU fan just like me. He loves Thanos as well. He is part of the Broken Army with Mick Rock. That's Ren Geekness. Ren, welcome to the Endgame series, man. How you doing?
Hello, Ryan. Thanks for having me on here. And kindest words I've ever heard in an introduction of my person. So thank you so much. And as you said, huge fan of the MCU. Can't wait to discuss this in depth with another huge fan like yourself.
Guys, this was originally going to be Cody Curtis, but Cody's taking a break from YouTube. So I just asked Ren, and he's like, yep, let's do this, man. And yeah, we're going to be talking about Spider-Man Homecoming, which is the first MCU Spider-Man film with Tom Holland as Spider-Man. You also had Michael Keaton as the Vulture, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, and you had Tony Revolori in there, Ned, Zendaya, Laura Harrier, I think that's her last name. We want you guys to join down below in the comment section. We're going to be answering questions, not just reviewing the movie. So there's 10 questions. We love for you guys to join the discussion with us and answer these 10 questions along. And also, what do you think of Spider-Man Homecoming? Do you love it, think it's okay, or do you absolutely hate it? We'd love to hear your thoughts down below. So, Ren, the first question I have for you, man, is what's your experience with Spider-Man Homecoming? When did you first see it? And were you a huge Spider-Man comic book reader? I'd love to know that.
I was. Actually, when I was a kid, and I was a kid who didn't like to read, Spider-Man was one of the few things I read. It was Spider-Man, Hulk, like Avengers comics, and then Batman, and that was it. Actually, I just realized this now. It's funny that you asked me to Spider-Man Homecoming, and now you asked me my experience, because Spider-Man Homecoming was actually my first press screening ever. That was when I got it all started in 2017 for me, and freaking Spider-Man was the first one I got to see very early. In fact, it was a breath of fresh air, not only for Spider-Man the character, but also for the MCU. It felt like it integrated perfectly, yet it was detached enough to be its own thing. If you had never seen an MCU film, it was just a world where this kid, who represents us, the audience, he's a huge fan of Iron Man, and it didn't feel weird at all, like Iron Man would exist in that world if we had no other context of what the MCU was.
For me, Spider-Man Homecoming was an anticipated film for me as well, and was also kind of risky as well, because Sony decided, you know, let's give Marvel some rights as well, and let's make this an MCU installment and a Sony installment. And so Spider-Man, for me, I grew up in love with the character. Wasn't a huge comic book reader growing up, but I knew who the character of Spider-Man was in his origin story. And seeing the Sam Raimi trilogy growing up as a kid, like Tobey Maguire at the time was my Spider-Man and my Peter Parker. Then the Amazing Spider-Man movies came out, and I was scared for Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was one of my worst comic book movies ever. I was so scared for the future of Spider-Man. We found out that Spider-Man was going to be in Captain America Civil War, and Tom Holland was going to be cast as Peter Parker Spider-Man. At the time, Tom Holland wasn't that big of an actor. He was in The Heart of the Sea with Chris Hemsworth, Thor. And so I was a little anxious, but excited, you know, because he looked funny in the trailer, and he was fantastic in Civil War. Now, Spider-Man Homecoming. My first experience seeing this movie, opening night, IMAX 3D, just like every MCU film. Sold out, big crowd, excited to see a Spider-Man film. And it was a fantastic experience. I really loved this film when I first saw it in theaters. I thought it was one of the best Spider-Man movies for sure. Tom Holland was excellent and all that. Michael Keaton, we'll get into all that. But then I watched it a couple more times. I saw it 2 more times. I think I've seen this movie 4 times, 4 times. And the 2 times I've rewatched it, my enjoyment has gone down a little bit, and I thought it was a little bit overrated. And I thought people are saying like top 3 Spider-Man movies. I'm like, okay, that's a little too far. But I decided to rewatch this movie again leading up to Endgame. My enjoyment has gone up. I think this is a great Spider-Man movie. It's not the best Spider-Man movie. I think Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie by far. What was your first thoughts on Spider-Man before Marvel got the rights to make an MCU film? So what was your thoughts on Spider-Man at the time before Marvel brought him into the MCU?
Well, like you, I grew up with the Sam Raimi trilogy, and at the time when I first saw it in 2007, I was 14, and I loved Spider-Man 3. So I wasn't at all disappointed with Spider-Man 3 back in my childhood. Meanwhile, as the years went by, I started seeing what other people saw in it, the flaws and all. And then it came to the Amazing Spider-Man series, which I wasn't a fan from the get-go. I wasn't a fan of the first one. I think you can imagine how not a fan I was of the second one.
Yeah.
Everything about it just made me sick. I actually fell asleep the first time I went to see it, and then I went a second time just because my best friend wanted to see it, and I was like, sure, fine. I fell asleep on the first time, so let's do this. Not that I fell asleep during a lot of the film. I fell asleep like during 10 minutes of it. I was also a huge fan of the 90s cartoon from Marvel as well.
Yeah.
That is actually my first experience with Spider-Man, even before the comics. I watched the cartoon, and after that, I got into the comics. That cartoon is amazing. If any of you haven't seen it, who are watching this video, just get to it. I was afraid, like you. And nowadays, we always say this kind of stuff like, give Feige a chance. Feige hasn't disappointed us before. Feige's got a strong hold on this. But at the time when he was coming in, I was hesitant because I thought, how are they going to integrate this kid into a world where all these superheroes already exist since the 1940s, since Captain America and all that. He doesn't go around the world, at least yet. Like before the films, he doesn't go around the world. He's just the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He keeps to himself, to the local people. He keeps doing the small good deeds. And that's really what represented Peter Parker. Even before they brought him to the screen, they already had a pretty good definition to who their Peter Parker would be. And as much as I love the Raimi trilogy and Tobey Maguire's performance as Spider-Man, the one thing that always stopped me from connecting to that version of the character 100% was the fact that he wasn't a teenager, and I didn't believe him as a teenager. I liked the performance of Tobey Maguire. I liked Tobey Maguire. I like seeing Spider-Man doing all the cool stuff. I felt for the character, but it's that one detail that didn't allow me to connect with him 100%.
At the time when 2014 came out and after Amazing Spider-Man 2, it seems Spider-Man was doomed unless Marvel came to save the day. And Kevin Feige had faith in Spider-Man being a part of the MCU. And Captain America Civil War is the greatest example because Tom Holland fits so well with the Avengers, fit well with Tony Stark, fit well with Captain America, and all these characters combined. Spider-Man means everything to me, and I'm sure for you too, Ren, because Spider-Man's an iconic hero, and I never want to see a studio mess up Spider-Man because I'd be really sad because he's an awesome character. And so I think Tom Holland just did a great job of just balancing what Spider-Man is and what Peter Parker is. And that leads to the next question, Ren. Is Tom Holland the best Spider-Man?
It's a tough question. It's a tough question because Tobey Maguire, he has 3 films to prove how good a Spider-Man he is.
Yes.
Andrew Garfield, he had 2 movies to prove how good a Spider-Man he is.
I'm also sorry to interrupt you, but I'm also including Shamik Moore from Spider-Verse.
Okay, sure, yeah. Okay, that makes it tougher. So, as I was saying, so Tobey Maguire had 3 films, Andrew Garfield had 2. We know a second one is coming from Tom Holland, and for sure a second one will come for Shamik Moore. For me, I hesitate to say that he's the best Spider-Man at this point, not that he can't become that in the future. However, I will say that from what we've seen thus far, he's the best combination out of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and they're both on their own great. Because Tobey Maguire was a great Spider-Man, but it was hard to get into the Peter Parker character because of what I said previously. And Andrew Garfield, I just did the same thing. I thought he was better as Peter Parker, but at the same time, there was too much cockiness in that character. And again, he wasn't a teenager. Shamik Moore as Miles Morales, he's great as Miles Morales. But to me, I'll always prefer Peter Parker. So out of these three, I'll say he is the best combination of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, what they bring to each other. I'll hold on to my final judgment until I at least see Far From Home.
Well, yeah, Jake Johnson plays this Peter Parker Spider-Man, but how I break down the Spider-Mans is really complicated. I look at the best Peter Parker, the best Spider-Man, best overall. So, Tobey Maguire, I think he's the best Peter Parker. I just like a dorky Peter Parker, and I thought he nailed that in the first two Spider-Man movies. Now, it wasn't that great in Spider-Man 3 with the Peter Parker, with do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Wasn't a fan of that. But Andrew Garfield, I was not a fan of his Peter Parker at all. Not Peter Parker to me. Like, Peter Parker isn't a skater douche, you know?
Exactly.
yeah. And they just rehashed a lot of Spider-Man 1, and I just did not like Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker, but I liked his Spider-Man. It's my least favorite Spider-Man. He was good. He was just like the comics. He was cocky and all that, makes a bunch of jokes. But Tom Holland, to me, does the best at interpreting Peter Parker with Spider-Man. So I gotta say Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man. I think he nails Peter Parker and he nails Spider-Man. Spider-Man in the comics is a teenager. He resembles everything about a teenager. Like, I love him with Robert Downey Jr. Like, his chemistry is perfect. And just his quips are so good, and his Peter Parker mannerisms are great. And his relationship with Aunt May, Marissa Tomei. And we know about the Aunt May age differences and all that. But I think Tom Holland in Civil War was great. Spider-Man Homecoming, he nailed that. And Infinity War as well. He got a lot of moments to shine. I want to save one character out of this, the Vulture. So, Ren, who is your favorite side character? Like the good people, like the high schoolers, if you could pick one.
Let me say this. After the first watch, I would probably have gone with Ned, his best friend.
Yeah.
But after several viewings of this film, probably controversial, but I will actually go with MJ, whatever the M and the J stand for, with Zendaya's character. The character is so weird, yet it represents so much of what high school life is. There's always that one weird kid on the corner that somehow we sympathize with and we feel this weird connection to, and we want to get to know that weird kid a little bit better. And to me, on subsequent viewings, Zendaya's character became that for me. Not even through Peter Parker, but I myself, I want to know who this girl is. Tell me who she is, movie. And I don't know, maybe it's because I was in her place when I was in high school. I was the weird kid who sarcastically talked back to people when I shouldn't have. I don't know, I just really like the character. I'm really curious about her.
I'm excited to see that relationship build in Far From Home. But yeah, I like Zendaya. She's good in that movie. I'd obviously go with Ned. I think Ned's hilarious. But I also like Laura Harrier. She's in Black Klansman. She plays Laura in the film. I think she's underrated. I thought she was great.
Yeah.
But I like Ned. Ned is like that perfect friend that I would have in high school. Like, his personality is great, and his back and forth with Tom Holland is great. Love the scene, love the Death Star scene where he plays it like, oh my god, you're the Spider-Man? Did you fight the Avengers?
I love the scene when Ned he basically almost reveals Peter's secret while in gym class. He says that Peter knows how to contact the Avengers, or that he's fought with the Avengers. And it has something, I don't remember the exact line, but it has something to do with Black Widow, because Liz wants to invite an Avenger to her party or something. It's when Peter is doing crunches. I really can't remember the line, but I know he blabs them out.
I just remember Flash saying, I got a hot date with Black Widow or something.
That's it, yeah. A hot date with Black Widow, that's it, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about our favorite scene. If you could just pick one scene, Ren, what's your favorite scene in this movie?
Coming from a comic nerd is no surprise, where Peter is looking at his reflection in the water, and his reflection is half his face and half is the mask that he has dropped.
Yeah.
And he's like, come on, you can do this. You're Spider-Man. You're Spider-Man. And he's crying. And I started crying as well the first time I watched the film. And he
Such
just
a great
lifts up
scene.
the boulders.
Such a great scene.
It's if I want to show Spider-Man to someone that doesn't know who Spider-Man is, I show them that scene. It's a perfect defining moment for a character in their origin story after so many struggles, after the guy who he idolizes has doubted him and has taken his apparent power away, and he shows not only to himself but to us, the audience, Peter Parker, is Spider-Man. The suit is nothing without him and not the other way around. I just love that scene.
That scene rivals the Miles leap of faith scene in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's my favorite Spider-Man moment. Like that's just fantastic. I love that scene. But my favorite scene is, this is a spoiler if you haven't seen Spider-Man Homecoming, when Peter finds out that Liz's father is the Vulture. That whole entire scene is some of the most intense, edge-of-your-seat dialogue I've seen in superhero films. Like, oh my God. With that twist in the theater, I was the loudest one. I was like, holy effing shit. And then everybody was like, oh my God. And then, what do you want to drink? Some bourbon, some Scott? I don't drink. That's the right answer. And then the scene in the car is fantastic. Right in. So good. And the little attention to detail every time I rewatch this movie is so fantastic. When they're at the red light, it shows Peter's face. But when it's go, it shows the green face on Michael Keaton as the Vulture. Like, that is perfect lighting. Good old Spider-Man. Oh my. And then, of course, the scene when it's just him and Adrian Toomes in the car. Listen, Peter, you saved my daughter's life, and so I'm going to let you go this one time. But if you ever mess with me and my business again, I'll kill you and your family. Oh my God, that scene! That's my favorite scene.
I still remember, as you said, that you were the loudest person in your theater. So I went to see the press screening, and then I went to the opening night as well with a few friends, and it was IMAX 3D. It was a packed theater, and I remember that in that moment, everyone goes, "Oh!" except me. But then when everyone stops doing that, I am the loudest person in the theater because I'm laughing at everyone else because I was the one person who knew already that it was coming. And in my mind, I just forgot that, oh shit, people are going to react to this.
So, Ren, let's talk about our least favorite scene.
The ending of the film. I love that Aunt May finds out about his film, about his secret. I love how she finds out. I just think the dynamic works with what we've seen so far up until this point in the film. I just don't know if it should have been the ending, given that the next time we see Spider-Man, he is in Infinity War. It's actually a pretty heavy story for an origin story, especially given that Spider-Man is a kid. I don't know that it should have been the ending. I don't know what I would have put on as the ending, but just felt weird that the film, our first big contact with this new Spider-Man, ends that way. It's not exactly the worst scene to end the movie with, but it's not the best for me.
I'm not a fan of the action sequences in this movie. It's in the trailer, so my least favorite scene is actually the boat scene because it was spoiled in the whole trailer. Like, that's definitely my least favorite scene in the movie. Like, there's not enough stakes to it, and it pretty much makes Spider-Man out to be the one responsible for that, and he totally was. And it's so rushed. And the final plane scene is also extremely rushed as well. Like, all the action scenes in this movie are so incredibly rushed. It didn't give enough time, not enough intensity. Like, there's no train scene in Spider-Man 2. There's no final fight with Spider-Man and the Green Goblin in the first Spider-Man movie. There's no brutal action scene in this film. It's just pretty much pain and gain safe. Yeah, definitely the boat scene, just because it was spoiled in the trailer, and it's just the most marketable thing in the whole movie. But other than that, there's really not a bad scene in this movie. That's the only one I can think of.
Yeah, I can get that.
What made this villain work? And do you think that Michael Keaton as the Vulture is the best Spider-Man villain?
I think what makes Marvel characters work, the ones that do work, because they have characters that don't work, Malekith.
Sorry.
So I think what made him work is because Marvel, when writing these characters, they worried about writing the human first and then add to him the suits and the wings and the vulture thing. I think what works is Adrian Toomes. He's a father. He's a blue collar worker who got screwed out of a job by frickin' Tony Stark. Who, cool, he's an Avenger and all. He's also trying to help, but we all know that feeling, or at least we know someone who knows that feeling. Someone who's trying to provide for the family but can't because the government or superiors in a company keep screwing them over, and they can't get their make bread to feed their family, their wives, their daughters, and whoever. Michael Keaton, for the most part, we see him as Adrian and not the Vulture. I think it's also why when people complain about people in comic book movies not wearing masks and always taking them off, that's what allows us for the relatability and for the humanizing of these characters. Adrian Toomes is very much humanized throughout this film because whenever he wants to address Peter, for instance, in the final battle, he doesn't address him as Vulture after Peter finds out a secret. He addresses him as Adrian Toomes, the father who's pleading to this kid who also understands the struggles that his aunt has in providing for him, that he's only trying to save his family. And I think that's the best aspect of this character and why he's one of the really great Marvel villains.
Everything you said is why this villain works. Like Michael Keaton, first of all, casting Michael Keaton, you know it's going to work. He plays a villain really well and a bird character very well. Batman, Birdman. Anyway, so Michael Keaton, just as this character, he's the character to open up the entire film. It's the aftermath of the Avengers, him and his gang cleaning up the mess the Avengers made and all that. And Tony Stark screws him out of a job, and then it just fleshes out his character, Adrian Toomes, overall. You definitely know his motivation. You definitely know why he's doing what he's doing. He's just a freaking father supporting his family. Sure, he killed some people like Logan Marshall Green. But anyway, the shocker. I'm the shocker. I shot people.
I'm the shocker.
But then he was an upgrade and it made up for it. But it did such a great job of just making a human Marvel villain, which we haven't seen in any of the MCU films. Malekith's not a human. Caecilius is not a human. Like Adrian Toomes just becomes a villain because of something that happens serious to him. He's just like Doc Ock. Doc Ock was not a villain at the start. He had a wife and he had a great job, but something went terribly wrong. His wife was killed in an accident, and then he's taken over by these tentacles and he kills some people. But that's what works so well about both Doc Ock and Vulture. Like, they're not bad guys, but something bad happens and they just get a little too crazy. But in terms of the best Spider-Man villain, that's the tough question. For me, Doc Ock has always had nostalgia for me. I would say Doc Ock, but Vulture is like, they're tied. I think they're tied.
I think Doc Ock just edges him out.
Yeah.
Because while I understand everything about Michael Keaton's character and his motivations, but he's still a bad guy. When it comes to Doc Ock, I just feel his pain, his struggle, his sorrow, his grief for losing his wife all the more, because basically when he's doing evil things, his conscience is basically dormant and the tentacle things are taking over. And I just love that dichotomy of almost a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing.
Let's talk about the end credit scenes now for question 8. So definitely tie something. Ren, do you think Marvel is going to make a Sinister Six movie in Phase 4? And if they do, what villains could you see?
This question would be so much easier to answer after Far From Home. I will go out on a gamble and say no. Not on Phase 4, but on Phase 5. And if they're going to do it with villains we already know, it's going to be Vulture. It's going to be Scorpion. Did Shocker number 2 die in Homecoming?
I don't think he did. Mysterio. Yeah.
Okay, then let's go with Shocker number 2. Let's go with Mysterio. I want to think outside the box for the 5th one before revealing the leader of the Sinister Six. I'm going to say the Rhino will be there just so they have a powerhouse on the team. And the leader of them all will be Kraven the freaking Hunter, because he's going to be the enemy on the third Spider-Man film, and then we'll have a Sinister Six.
I think Phase 4. I don't know, but they haven't talked about it or anything. They definitely tease Michael Keaton's coming back, and we'll have Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. But yeah, I think if they do a Sinister Six movie, it should be Michael Keaton as the Vulture, Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, Scorpion, Kraven the Hunter, and finally, I think the final member, they should bring back Doc Ock, the OG.
Oh, shit. Alfred Molina.
I love that they brought Alfred Molina back, but I don't if they give him a really good salary, but I don't know. J.K. Simmons make a cameo, please. Yeah,
that's the one guy you should always recast. You should always cast as J. Jonah Jameson, despite the reboot.
J.K. Simmons, I don't care if you're doing Batman or anything. Please, 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 please. So let's go to the 9th question, Ren. Where does Spider-Man Homecoming rank in your MCU ranking?
Just makes it into my top 10. It is my number 10 of the MCU films for me.
Just number 10. Okay.
Yeah, just number 10. Right after Captain America: The First Avenger, because that film is underrated.
As of right now, is at my number 12 or 13. It's right back and forth once I rewatch. I think Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'm not sure. Yeah. So I would say 12 right now for 12 for Spider-Man Homecoming. Now we're at the final question, the one you've all been waiting for, and Ren as well. Ren, how will Spider-Man Homecoming affect the Endgame?
Due to its inclusion in the MCU, and due to Peter Parker's presence in the MCU, this only gives more drive to Tony Stark to save the only person that ever came close for him to call a son. His protege, his biggest fan that actually went on to teaming up with him and be a superhero with him and trying to save the universe with him. This character brought a whole ton of humanity out of Tony Stark. He brought so much more dimensions to him from the moment he came in. I think not only that, but also Endgame, we will see a lot more of the Peter Parker perspective, because before Infinity War and Endgame and how connected they are, Peter Parker has never seen anything even remotely similar to a catastrophe of this disaster. And not that he's going to see anything because he's dead, but when he comes back, and we all know they're going to come back, I want to see how that affects him. Do they remember being dead? I want to see how this, let's say, 18-year-old kid deals with having died, with having been turned to dust by a purple giant gauntlet-wielding alien. We've seen that Marvel knows how to deal with a human drama of things and focus more on that than on the superheroics when they need to. So I want to see how a teenager, a child, basically deals with everything that went down at the end of Infinity War and that will go down in Endgame. I think it's a different perspective from any other superhero that we have on the MCU.
Tony Stark just lost his protege, and Peter Parker died in the snap after Infinity War. And it's going to come down to what Tony Stark can do, using his wits and his smarts to save like you said, the closest to being his son, and how he brings him back as well. And I think Peter Parker in this movie, when they do come back, they're going to come back eventually, and they're going to fight Thanos. And Peter Parker is going to use a lot of his abilities, just like in the previous films. I hope he uses the insta-kill mode on Thanos. No, Karen, I don't want to use the insta-kill mode. Now you're going to have to use the insta-kill mode. I have no idea what's going to happen. Like I say in all these prediction videos, like all of our predictions are probably jack shit. And
isn't that great? Don't you love that you don't know what is going to happen?
Exactly. Yeah, it's just gonna fall right on our faces. But I'm interested to see what Spidey does, what Peter does in this movie, and his ability with the Iron Spider suit, and how he's gonna meet the other Avengers as well. I'm curious about that. But yeah, that's it, guys. That does it for our discussion on Spider-Man Homecoming. So in the comment section below. What are your answers to these questions as well? We want to hear your responses. And what's your theory on how Homecoming will affect the Endgame? Do you have a different view than us? Are we missing something? Are we just confused and don't know what we're talking about? Let us know down below in the comment section. And Ren, thank you so much, man, for joining me for Spider-Man Homecoming and in the Endgame series, man. It's so well appreciated. And Ren, tell my subscriber base where they can find you on social media.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. I'm always down to talk MCU at all times, whether it's on YouTube or just the two of us. And you guys can find me on Ren Geekness on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. They're all the same. I do movie reviews like Ryan. I do all sorts of talks on the MCU and on all sorts of geeky films and other geeky stuff. So come check me out. I hope you enjoyed the channel. And again, Ryan, thank you so much for having me on this awesome series.
He does a lot of movie reviews, a lot of geek classic reviews, and all that fun movie stuff. So yeah, if you love movies, Ren does a lot of movie talk on his channel. So go check it out. Hey guys, thank you for watching this episode in the Endgame series. If you guys liked it, give it a thumbs up and go subscribe to Ren as well as me as well for more content. And stay tuned for the next 2 episodes, guys. We are getting to the ending of the Endgame series soon. No! But anyway, we got a final 2017 MCU movie coming up, Thor Ragnarok, and joining me for that is Tyler Calvert and Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Joining me for that is John from The Real Talk. Look forward to those next 2 episodes, guys. It's going to be fun. All my social media links are in the description down below. Click that notification bell on your way out, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye! Web shooter.